Hello, everyone, and welcome to Path to the Priesthood, the podcast where we sit down with Greek Orthodox clergymen from around the country, and we ask them what it was that guided them to ordained ministry in Christ's church. I'll be your host, Christo Pappademos. We have a very special guest for you today, someone who's a good friend of mine, Father Niko Bekris. And before we turn things over to hear from Father Niko, let's hear a little bit about him. Father Niko was born in Seattle, Washington in 1981 and was baptized at the Church of the Annunciation in Amaliada, Greece on August 15th, 1982. Very cool. After graduating from the University of Washington in 2004 with a bachelor's degree in history, he enrolled at Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology in Brookline, Massachusetts, having felt a calling from the Lord to become a priest. He finished his studies in 2008, graduating with a Master of Divinity. Upon completing his studies, he served as the youth director of the Metropolis of San Francisco for 3 years, 2008 to 2011, while also serving at the Greek Orthodox Cathedral of the Annunciation in San Francisco. He was ordained to the Holy Diaconate on December 14th, 2008, at his home parish of the Assumption in Seattle, Washington, and was ordained to the Holy Priesthood on August 15th, 2011, at the Annunciation Cathedral, after which he began serving at the cathedral as the full-time associate pastor. Upon graduating from theological school, Father Niko married the love of his life, Stella Zachariou-Vakis, on August 16, 2008, at Presbytera Stella's home parish of the Nativity of Christ Church in Novato, California. God has blessed Father Niko and Presbytera Stella with 2 boys, Christos and Dimitri. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Father Niko Bekris.
That's a very kind introduction, Christo. Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. It's nice. It's nice that we can finally do this together. We actually work not very far from each other in the Bay Area, and so it's nice to finally. We've spent time together, talking shop, if you will. Father Niko actually worked at the church where I now work, so it helps to talk about work together with someone who's walked in my shoes. But now it's nice to connect with you, so you can tell us about your story. To the priesthood, because even though I've known you for many years, I actually don't really know your story myself, so I'd love to hear it from you today.
Wow. Well, it's very kind, and I know that we just said this before we started recording, but it always feels a little bit strange as a priest to talk about yourself a little bit, because we're supposed to be embodying servant leadership, and as the Son of Man came to serve and not be served, of course, as we know. So it always feels a little bit strange, to turn the camera a little bit towards you, right? But at the same time, I think this podcast is there's a wonderful mission about this podcast. I mean, Path to the Priesthood, if it is meant to kind of talk about how the Holy Spirit works in today's world, and maybe, I don't know, inspire a couple of young men who are on the fence about the priesthood or thinking about that, and gets maybe some of those thoughts flowing a little bit in anybody's life. I mean, that's a wonderful, wonderful cause. So I'm happy to be here. My first reaction when you asked me to be on here was, man, he can't find any better guest than this. But it's great to see you again, Christo. And the podcast could have been about whatever. We could have been talking about college football or something.
We totally could have, actually. Yeah. Part 2.
Yeah. So, as a former, professional, well, maybe not professional, semi-pro yourself, which is pretty cool, right? But it's wonderful to be here, and I think the first thing I should start off with talking about my story is gratitude, and just a very, very deep gratitude for what God has given me. And there's a lot that we could say about that, but I guess I'll start from the beginning. So, in terms of the priesthood, it doesn't just come spontaneously. I mean, it can, I suppose, come spontaneously out of the blue, but it always starts with some kind of a story from childhood or from someone's makeup. It goes hand in hand with their walk with God, with their own faith. Right. So I guess I'll start a little bit from the very beginning. So I grew up in a family of 5 boys and 2 Greek Orthodox parents. My dad is an immigrant from Greece. My mom was born here to Greek immigrants, so I'm first and second generation. And we would go to church. I mean, the church was the center of our life in so many ways, just like it is for a lot of Greek Americans. And I would say we probably went about, 2-3 times a month. I wouldn't say we were there every single Sunday, but part of that was because my family has a restaurant. And so, the restaurant was busiest on Sundays. and Saturday mornings that University of Washington had Husky games, had the football games because we were close to the university. So my parents would go to work on Sunday morning, or they'd go to church with us on Sunday morning. And so it was just a regular thing. And I was an altar boy. We all were altar boys at different times. You know, we all did Goya. We all were in Sunday school. We did Greek dance, et cetera, et cetera.
What parish was this, Father, in Seattle?
Yeah. So Assumption, there were two parishes growing up in Seattle. Assumption was the smaller parish. That's the one I went to mostly. But because I had three younger brothers, you know, St. Demetrius was a much bigger parish, and there were a lot more kids and a lot more youth activities. And so there weren't as many activities for my younger brothers. And so we kind of at some point gradually started going to St. D's a little bit more.
Okay.
I just started going to both. So I consider my home parish, you know, there was never any like, you know, drama or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but I consider Assumption my home parish, and that's why I was ordained to the diaconate. That's why I was an altar boy, and I.
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, so I mean, you know, all that was an incredible blessing, and we had a lot of priests there who were very beautiful men and wonderfully influential to me, and just, you know, kind and loving, and just had a beautiful hearts, as I said, were great role models and all that. It should be noted also that in addition to going to church and having that Greek Orthodox experience in America, my family would go to Greece every other summer for basically the whole summer.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, my grandparents were alive there, and my dad still has two sisters who were there, and cousins and everything. And when we would go to Greece to visit relatives, you know, we would be driving from one house to the next to go visit people. And along the way, as you know, I mean, you can throw a rock from one church to the other in Greece, right? But also what happens is there are also miracle sites that you can stop at along the way. There's pilgrimage sites. And so casually, my dad would just like kind of point out the window and say, oh yeah, well, now we're passing this place where this angel appeared to so-and-so and saved them from the Turks, or we're passing from this like miracle working icon of Panagia, or this miracle happened in XYZ place, or such and such apostle was martyred here, right?
Amazing. Just casually drive out the window. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the old world, right? Is that it just kind of goes hand in glove with so many of these ancient, you know, stories, and including ancient stories of faith, which is so beautiful.
Totally.
My family's not too far from Patara, which is where the Apostle Andrew was martyred. His head is still there, you know, so we would stop there. So we would stop and light a candle at these various pilgrimage sites, and, you know, seeing the incredible reverence of people who were going to, you know, visit there, and the stories that you'd hear as a kid about how miraculous these things were, the relic, or the icon, or the monastery, or wherever we would stop at, right? And again, I wouldn't say that we would like run from one pilgrimage site to the next. It was just one of the things that was just kind of happen, and it was just kind of, you know, in
natural experience. Yeah.
It was very much organic, right? As it is kind of in a lot of Orthodox countries. Yeah, so it was a really
cool that you had both the quintessential Greek American experience in the two parishes, with a lot going on in the way of you know, youth activities, but then you also had kind of an experience that many people don't have until a much more mature age in life, this pilgrimage experience too. So you had both of these working at the same time from a young age. That's very interesting, and it's pretty cool to hear.
And of course, we're blessed in San Francisco that we have, you know, the relics of an incorrupt saint, St. John Maximovich, right? I mean, and I felt when I was in San Francisco that he was very much looking out for me and my family when I was there too, as I'm sure you know, and I'm sure you've heard from many, many, many parishioners about St. John Maximovich. It was really cool, by the way. I don't know if Al and Lula Osipov are both still alive and still coming to church, but so Al is Russian, and he's Alexei in Russian, and Lula is Greek. But Al was an altar boy for St. John Maximovich.
Whoa.
Yes. I mean,
I did not know
one of many altar boys at the church that they had. But you'd hear these stories about, I mean, people who interacted with St. John. I mean, it was just incredible, right? So yeah. So that was really cool. And then I should also mention, you know, because it's very much on my heart as well. The island of Zakynthos is also not too far from my family's, where my dad is from in Greece. And St. Dionysius' incorrupt relics are there too. So another big saint and pilgrimage site in the Orthodox world too. So the reason I bring all that up is not to talk about how special I am or whatever. I mean, but at the same time, when a kid is growing up, and especially when you get to your teenage years, you do reach a point in your life where you're like, okay, so does this make sense to me?
Right.
We talk about cradle Orthodox versus convert Orthodox, or everything in between, and all the various shades of that and the degrees of that. But at the end of the day, whether you're cradle or convert, you have to choose for yourself if you want to remain in the church.
Right.
And so when you're a teenager and you get your driver's license, and you're basically tell yourself, well, I've been going to church with my parents all this time. Now I drive myself. Do I want to choose to keep going to church? Do I want to choose to go serve in the altar still, right? And if any, as we're working through those things in our life, which happens for everybody, as we go through those things and ask ourselves those tough questions, does this make sense to me? Can I make this my own, right? Those miracle stories and those pilgrimage stories really anchored me in a lot of ways. I mean, because even if you say, well, gosh, I don't know about this or about that or whatever, but man, there is no logical explanation for why this miracle site is standing, and why this person who was martyred by the Turks could have possibly done that in their life, right? And there's a million stories like that. And so those made a huge impression on me as a kid,
That's very cool, because it sounds like those experiences really created a strong foundation of faith for you. Because around the age of 16 or so, when kids are driving, is when they're often pulled in the directions of extracurriculars these days, as you know, sports being one of those main activities. And these days, a lot of sporting events are happening on Sundays. And it's interesting that you, being a big sports guy, for those of you who might not know, watching Father Niko, is probably one of the top, athletes, I would say, in Metropolis of San Francisco, just very into sports, right? But this guy at the age of 16, it sounds like, decided to drive himself to church on Sunday. Man, why don't you continue with where you were about that?
Well, I would be lying if I said that I didn't have a couple of Sundays where the Seahawks were on the East Coast, and I was like, I'll get ready after the first quarter. And,
of course.
And then the first quarter goes by, and then maybe the second quarter, and then before you know it, your mom's really mad at you, even though she can't, she can't pull you by the ear anymore. But
right.
She's just profoundly disappointed that you chose to stay home and watch the football game. But no, that was a little more rare than I joke about or whatever.
Sure.
But for sure, no, I mean, our kids play sports now too. At least our oldest, who's 8 years old now, and I'm a huge sports fan, as you said. But even I'm looking at these fields of thousands of kids on Saturday mornings now in soccer or whatever else, and I'm going whoa. I mean, I love that we're doing it. There's lots of great lessons from sports, and teamwork and selflessness and humility and working hard, to make your skills better and all that. But it's it's not meant to replace everything else, right? I mean, it's we got to put it in the right context, of course, like everything. So anyway, so when it comes to fast forward a little bit. So after I got my driver's license and high school ends and everything, so I went to University of Washington, and I was living at home during college because the university was literally maybe a mile or two from my parents' house.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my family's restaurant was actually not too far from the university also. We got a lot of students. It was really close to the quote unquote Greek system, like the Greek row or whatever.
Oh, the other Greek system. Yeah.
The other Greek system. Right. So the fraternities and sororities were all not too far from my family's restaurant. And there was a lot of restaurants and stores and stuff nearby UW when we were there. So it was very much a part of our life. And I applied to UW and got in. And right around the time we were starting and doing freshman orientation, everyone and their mother starts asking you questions about what do you want to major in, right?
Yeah, sure, of course.
And I didn't really know. Now, University of Washington isn't like the UC system down here where you have to declare in order to go. Or at least maybe not with all the UC schools, but I know a lot of them, you have to you get accepted, and then the next thing you do is you have to declare your major, and then you start your classes then. Right, I was advised to take a little of everything just to kind of see what I liked. And I already knew what I liked and what I didn't like and what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. But when I was starting to sit and think a little more seriously about what I wanted to do with my life, because that goes hand in hand with what you want to major in, right?
Yep.
I would think about things like, do I want to be a lawyer because I like debating or whatever? Do I want to be a sports journalist or something? Do I want to do something unrelated to that, do I want to open my own restaurant, like my dad did, right? With his brother. And as I would sit and think about these things, if I started more than 5 seconds, basically, to kind of start thinking more critically about them, there was this incredible sinking feeling in my heart that was like, no, not for you.
Whoa.
And I could not explain it. And I maybe thought I was imagining things or whatever. Now, by this time, I was praying by myself. I mean, I remember maybe when I was like in junior high, my parish priest, Father Steve Tsichlis, who's now the priest at St. Paul's in Irvine, California, a wonderful man. He gave a sermon about how you're not truly Orthodox unless you read your Bible every day, even if it's just one verse.
Wow.
I don't know if I would exactly couch it in those terms, but
yeah.
but when I was like 12 or 13 years old, or whenever I heard that, I said, well, I'm Orthodox and I want to stay Orthodox, so maybe I should start reading my Bible too, right? So
Yeah.
I was starting to, do a little bit of that, and I was starting to pray a little bit on my own, and I enjoyed it, and I started, feeling guidance on things in my life in high school and stuff. So I had, a little bit of a foundation there, on my for personal prayer life. And so I was praying about, these kinds of things, and just kind of, thinking about what I wanted to do, what God wanted me to do, what I was called to do, right?
Yeah.
So as the quarter started, we were on quarters at UW, and when the quarter started on October 1st, which is really late and really cool, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So freshman orientation was for a couple weeks in September, and then school started, and I started walking around campus, going to my classes and saying, all right, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And I had done theater in high school. I played sports, but I also did theater. I loved theater.
Oh.
And I thought to myself, like, well, do I want to continue theater? I hear that University of Washington has a great school of drama. And Jim Caviezel, by the way, who played Jesus in Passion of the Christ, went to University of Washington School of Drama. So
no way, some esteemed alumni from that.
Yeah. A little bit anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, that was pretty cool to hear. So I asked somebody one day, where's the School of Drama? And, it's funny how we talk about School of Drama because the Greeks invented drama, and we could talk about several schools of drama that we've all been a part of, right? But I won't go there. But it's actual School of Drama, actual place where you study drama. So I was pointed the direction of the School of Drama, and I started walking to the school, and every single step I was taking, when we talk about that sinking feeling when thinking about careers, every step I was taking towards the School of Drama was as if something inside of me was saying no.
Whoa.
No. And it was getting louder and louder as I got closer to this building, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what it was, and I thought I must have been imagining things.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what is going on here? This is crazy. I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I keep walking, find the School of Drama, walk up to the front door. By the time I put my hand on the door, not a knob, but whatever you call it, was like a huge, like Gothic architecture thing, right? The bar that you open it up. Yeah, pole, whatever it is. The second my hand like gripped it, it was like this red alert, like alarm was going off inside of me.
Whoa.
And I still didn't know what it was. And so I was like, this has got to be my imagination. I don't know. So I open the door, I walk inside, I see all the students walking around. I walk up to this board in the lobby with all the auditions listed on there.
Yeah.
I walk over just to look at them, and I just take a glance for like 3 seconds, and then I turn around, I walk out the door, and that was it. And I just forgot. Gone.
Look at that.
Right? There was something inside of me that was just kind of pulling me away, and I could not understand. So I had this kind of experience with various careers for the better part of, I would say, a month, when I was thinking about what I was going to do the rest of my life. And I still couldn't put my finger on what it was. I still couldn't sort through what was happening within my heart at this time, what God was trying to tell me.
Yeah.
And I would pray about it, but I still didn't feel like a clear direction one way or the other. One night I was reading the book of Acts, and just because it was just kind of the next chapter that I was, on, I guess, in the Bible. And I would do my readings at nighttime before I went to bed. Some people are more morning early birds, and they do their devotionals in the morning. I always have liked doing my prayer time in the nighttime.
Sure.
I was reading, this story about after the day of Pentecost, when the apostles have already started their ministry. There's one day where the apostles, including Peter, walk up to the temple to pray at one of the specified hours of prayer. And they see this paralyzed man outside the door of the temple who's asking them for money. And the initial reaction of the apostles was, look at us. We don't have anything.
Yeah.
But I do have one thing, Peter says. In the name of Jesus Christ, get up and walk. And the man is healed. He gets up and he walks. He's not given money. He's given healing. He's made well. And I don't know what it was about this story. I think it was because it was ordinary people just living their life and performing miracles in the name of Christ.
Yeah.
The fact that they didn't have money made them very ordinary, right?
Right.
And the fact that they had miraculous powers, right? I mean, by God's grace, and they healed somebody. All of a sudden, I lift my head up from the Bible, and I just, out of the blue, ask myself, does God want me to become a priest? And the second I asked that question, it felt as if the last piece of the puzzle had been put in place. And that terrified me. I'm like, whoa. I mean, this is very, very unexpected. I had never even thought about this. I thought to myself, I need to sleep on this. I must be imagining things, right? So I just need to go to bed. It was the last thing I thought about when I went to sleep. It was the first thing I thought about the next morning. It was all I could think of all morning long, all day long, having breakfast, getting changed, waiting at the bus stop, in class, after class, on the bus. I mean, no matter where I was, I could not stop thinking about this feeling, right? And it was by no means a feeling like a baseball bat hitting you over the head. It was as if somebody had a very light but very firm tug, like a fishing line connected to your heart, and just doing very lightly, very gently, right? But it was definitely there. And I did not pray about it because I knew what the answer was going to be.
Right.
So I didn't talk about it with God, and I didn't talk about it with anybody.
I was going to ask, okay, so no, I don't believe there were any priests in your family before you, right? So no one you could just pick up the phone and be like, hey, Theo, Dad, whatever. But and so now how long did you feel this string pulling on you, and where did it pull you that finally had you act on it?
It wasn't like your family, right, where you could just knock on your dad's door and be like, hey, Dad, can you help me out?
Yeah, can you help me? What's this feeling I'm getting here? Yeah.
Right, exactly. It was, before I continue, let me just say real quick why it was terrifying, because I realized years later now, people seem confused when I tell them why I was so scared, and or when I say that I was scared.
Okay.
And I think it's because I loved all of the priests in my parishes growing up, right? I mean, I went to confession with several of them. I saw them at summer camp. I was an altar boy. I loved all of them very dearly. Some of them were way older than me, like way older than me. Yeah. And all of them, at least in the interactions I had with them, or the spaces that I interacted with them, doesn't mean they weren't like real guys too, but they always seemed really serious. They were really loving, and I never doubted that. But I never saw one that kind of had the same interests as me. I didn't know if you could Greek dance as a priest. I didn't know that if you could play sports as a priest. I didn't know if you could be into movies as a priest. I didn't think I could be myself.
These are all common kind of misconceptions that people have, that if you're a priest, you're a certain way, you stay away from certain activities, those are off limits. And so these are all things that were very important to you, obviously, as many of us know, but some of you might not. Father Niko is also an excellent Greek dancer. So these are things that were very important to you, and people wonder, do I have to sacrifice these very unique parts of myself to fit the role of a priest? So you're wondering this as you're thinking about the priest that you currently knew back then. Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously now I know that it opens up a lot of avenues when you have these things. I mean, when people identify with this, but for all I knew when I was a kid, for all I knew, the priest lived at the church, and I didn't know any better.
Yeah. All kids think that. Yeah.
Like, does he live there? Does he have a room there and he just sleeps there? I don't know. I mean, where's his family? I don't know. I didn't know any of these things when I was a little kid.
How would you? You're a kid. Yeah.
And even when I was a teenager, I hadn't given it too much more thought about, the daily life or whatever, a day in the life, shall we say.
Yeah.
So I basically carried this anxiety with me. And it was a deep anxiety because I just could not escape this. I could not run from it. I couldn't think about anything else for like weeks at a time, right? Finally, at the end of the month of October, just a couple of days ago, I was thinking about this because we just passed this feast day now, the Feast of St. Demetrius. So as I mentioned, the bigger church in Seattle is St. Demetrius. And, you know, we would never see Bishop Anthony, you know, I mean, of blessed memory, or whoever the Metropolitan was, all that often, because Seattle was, you know, obviously way 2 states north of California. And I would say Bishop Anthony, in my recollection, you know, I probably saw him once every couple of years coming to my parish, you know. I saw him at FDF every year, you know, the folk dance competition, because he loved that. But I never saw him, you know, a whole lot. And so when I heard that he was going to be coming to celebrate liturgy, Vespers and liturgy for the Feast of St. Demetrius, I don't know what possessed me, but I went on my own to Vespers on October 25th. And so this is the year 2000, right?
Okay.
And I had not told a soul about, you know, what I had been feeling. I mean, maybe like a friend at school or something, very casually, who wasn't Orthodox or something, and they didn't really know what the heck I was talking about. So
yeah, a safe person to tell that.
Right. So I had not really delved into this very deeply with anybody, even though it was preoccupying my thoughts for all the time, right? So I go to Vespers, October 25th, for the Feast of St. Demetrius, and you know, I'm sitting in the back of the church by myself. Nobody around me, right? Way in the back. And at one point, you know, Metropolitan Anthony, who was a very charismatic and very gregarious personality, and he would do this from time to time. I remember him doing it at the liturgy at FDF and doing it in parishes, you know, when he would come, you know, and celebrate and stuff. At one point he says, "Stop the service."
I'm getting flashbacks. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You ever do this in Elk Grove and stuff? Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And he would like, and at the time, I mean, I remember hearing like him saying, I want a copy of the list of all the parish council members, and I want them to come up. He didn't do this then, but I'm just saying he would do things like this. Like, how many of you guys are in church? He would say.
But always keep you on your toes, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Or randomly at FDF, it was funny because randomly he would be given the list of all the group names, and randomly he would pick one and just say, I want this group to come up to the stage right now during liturgy. See, I want to see how many of you are in church. Otherwise, you're disqualified. So it was like crazy. People would scramble. They would call up their friends in the hotel rooms who were still sleeping, and they'd
get down. Yeah.
There was all kinds of stuff like this. So he does this also at the Vespers of St. Demetrius, but he doesn't call anybody up. What he does is he says, I would like all the altar boys, please, to come out to the throne right now.
Okay.
I wasn't serving in the altar. I didn't serve at the altar at St. Dee's. I'd served at Assumption, right?
Gotcha.
So the priests, like, you know, are kind of panicking. They're like, go, the altar boys, like, get out there, you know? And so all of a sudden, this group of altar boys congregates at the bishop's throne.
Okay.
And Bishop Anthony starts talking to the altar boys. And he says, you know, I think it is great to see what all of you are doing right now. But I would also like to see at least some of you take the next step, he says.
Whoa.
Do you know what I mean by that? And then he pulls out the deacon who was serving that night. It was deacon at the time, Tom Tsagalakis. He's now a priest in So he pulls out Deacon Tom and he says, do you see him? I remember when he was your age. Now he has gray in his beard. He was So he starts launching into this talk, this exhortation to the altar boys about how we need priests in the church and how some of the altar boys should go to seminary. I had never heard anybody talk about the need for priests ever, right? And so I'm sitting in the back of the church and I have this weighing on my heart, and I'm trying to convince myself that this is not God talking to me directly.
Right.
So he continues and he's talking to the boys and he says, you know, XYZ, we need more priests. I'd love to see this. And da, 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 da. He finishes his remarks and then the boys are dismissed to go back into the altar.
Okay.
But before resuming the service, Bishop Anthony turns to the congregation and he says, oh, and if any of you should receive a calling, do not turn your back on it, for you will regret it for the rest of your life.
Whoa. Dude, that is crazy. And only Bishop Anthony, I mean, he was in many ways the voice of God to us when we're growing up. To have all that going on in your life at that moment, culminating at the Feast of St. Demetrius, Bishop Anthony, like you said, who you rarely saw, but we all knew as this larger-than-life personality, connected to God himself. And then for him to say pretty much the perfect words that you needed to hear right at that moment. That is a mind-blowing story.
It is as if God was speaking directly to me. It was this Metropolitan Anthony was like just standing right in front of me, and he was only speaking to me.
Yeah.
And I at that point I heard the words and I just looked up and I was like, okay, I got the message.
I got it. Yeah.
And I got to say, I shouldn't let this continue without mentioning how warm Bishop Anthony was with me. He actually recognized me. I went back for liturgy the next day, and in Andidro line afterwards, and I'm just like, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is he going to say something again? When I'm in line, is he going to say something to me? What's going to happen now? Kind of thing. And so when it's my turn to get Andidro from him, he gives me the piece of Andidro, and then he grabs my hand, and he looks at me and he says, "How are you, my boy? Except you're not a boy anymore." He says. I was 18 at the time, and I was about to turn 19. So I think he had remembered me from the dance competition, because he would see me in Seattle at FDF and stuff. Yeah, so it was really special, to see that.
Man, he was very good that way, and it's crazy to hear, because I was much younger when Bishop Anthony was, in his prime as Metropolitan, but to hear the way he, we all know the impact he had on the grand scale, opening 25 churches in 25 years and all that, but from the large projects to the very personal connections, it's just very cool to hear this story and this side of Bishop Anthony from you. So that's an amazing story. Very cool.
So, I mean, it was life-changing when I heard those words. So here I was now, it's the end of October. I've been feeling a calling, for about a month to the priesthood. And I still didn't really know where to go after this, what to do. And even then, I mean, I still didn't accept it right away. I still was trying to talk myself out of it on many, many days. And finally, another month goes by, another month goes by. And I remember on Christmas Day, 2000, I finally said, I don't care who I talk to about this, but I've got to deal with this. I've got to face this, and I've got to just get answers from somebody about all this.
Sure.
And on Christmas Day, I went to Assumption with my family for liturgy. And at the time, Father John Hondros was the priest in Assumption. He was there for about 5 years. He's at St. John the Baptist in Las Vegas now. And and I was an altar boy, with Father John. And by that point I was dancing at St. Demetrius a lot. I was doing youth programs there. So because I was a teenager and there was a lot of friends there at that point and stuff. So anyway, but I would still go back to Assumption for church. And Christmas Day, again, on the line, after the liturgy, I said, okay, I've decided I'm going to talk to Father John about what's going on in my life right now. And I'm just going to try to set up an appointment and just go talk to him. And I've never done this in my life. I've never made an appointment with my priest. I've never gone to his office. I've never, but it was like serious business and I just needed answers.
Yeah.
So I remember being in the line. And when I got to Father John, I told him, I said, Father, I really need to talk to you. And is there a time I can come by the church and talk to you? And he says, yeah, he says, that's fine. My family and I are going on vacation until after New Year's, but after we're done, we'll set up a time early January and we'll talk. I said, great. Thank you so much. So I know, whatever, like a week or two later, I finally go to Father John's office. And, I remember driving there, one weekday, and I just gushed in his office about everything. I told him every single bit of this story that I've just told you. And I said, okay, what do you think? And he says, well, Niko, that sounds to me like a genuine calling. He said, cool. And I'm like, oh, man, I still was hoping I'd be imagining things, right? So I said, but Father, what does this mean? I said, so no one in my family's ever been a priest. And he's like, no one in my family had ever been a priest either. And I said, really? And I said, well, what is seminary? I don't even know what that is. Is it like a monastery where like you go and like there's no talking and like you just walk around in robes all day and do work and stuff? I said, I don't want to go to a monastery. I want to, be in the world still, And he says, no, it's a graduate school. I said, get out of here. It's a grad school. I said, you mean as in you have to have good grades to go? And he says, yeah. And I said, no way. He says, yeah, you have to have an undergraduate degree to go. It's a graduate school just like any other. Like you have to have a bachelor's and then you get your master's. And I was like, sopa, as they say, right? Diles. So we probably talked in Father John's office for a good hour, maybe hour and a half. Okay. And he just answered questions that I had. And in doing so, I realized that a lot of it was misconceptions.
Yeah.
A lot of it was bringing it down to earth,
Cool.
because I had never encountered, I mean, I'd never, like I said, there's no one in my family who's ever been a priest. The closest it gets is, I think my papu's like second cousin married a priest, and I never even met her or anything, right? She
Okay.
was a presbytera in my family, but I never met her, and
Okay.
never went to their church or anything when we were in Greece. It was not in the Chorio, it was somewhere further away. And again, I just didn't know about any of this stuff. And when Father John started saying things to me, also, this was the most important piece, I feel. Like, you have to be true to yourself. That's the most important piece. And even years later, when I was at the seminary, Father Niko Bekris, who was a wonderful, super priest, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, another great role model for myself, and I know a lot of seminarians, he would say, look, you have to bloom in the pot that you were planted in.
Yes.
God doesn't call you to like be, in this pot to become a certain kind of plant and then like expect you to become something completely different,
Right.
like you're a flower and you have to become a bush or something. It just doesn't work that way. You have to bloom in the pot you were planted in. And so this is what a lot of the priests and mentors in my life were saying to me. Well, like, you have to be yourself. You have to, God is not calling you to be someone other than who he created to be,
It's truly amazing. I mean, for, not having a priest in the family, it sounds like God kind of placed really the best role models. I don't even know if it's an accurate term, but role models, the best priests around, and Bishop Anthony, of course, as well, to kind of guide you in the best way possible. I can't think of any better advice to receive before attending the seminary: staying true to yourself, because you were called as you were, as a guy that loves sports and Greek dancing and all these things, and you were kind of validated in who you were as Niko Bekris already, and they encourage you to remain that way up through this. So that's very cool. That's very good.
Yeah, it was really cool. And you know what, Christo, it's interesting because looking back on it now, there's absolutely nothing I could do with my life that would make me even close to as happy. There's nothing, right? I mean, no matter what, all those other careers I've been thinking about before, sure, they might have scratched an itch. It was obviously, each of those was related to a hobby or something I was passionate about, something I was familiar with, but it wasn't a calling to me. I mean, God called me, God had other plans, and he brought me to a different place. And, fast forward, I mean, you see as a priest, I mean, Father Nick Castana, at seminary, he was my Byzantine Chant professor for the first year, had an expression, God is great in spite of me, right?
Yeah.
And he is, and that's so true. And so, despite being a broken vessel, I mean, Jesus can use a donkey to ride into Jerusalem. He can use me to distribute communion or whatever, right? So,
that's very good. That's yeah.
Sure. And so it's this. So looking back on it now, I mean, you see that who you are, and you are who you are because God created you to be a certain way, and then be placed in a certain place in a specific calling. And so, to kind of turn it a little bit now, in terms of, if I were to make this, talk a little bit more sermonic, if you will,
sure.
There is something to be said about gifts as well. All of us have gifts of some kind, right?
Mm.
And regardless of what we think is the best thing for our life, if God calls us in another place, and to do that, to listen to that call, obviously we have to be listening. We have to be hearing, just like the prophets listened, and the saints listened. And they said, and we have to ask God, where do you want me, right? But whatever he answers is going to be ultimately not only the best thing for you, but for the world around you too,
Right.
And I mean, even whether you knew that or not, when you were feeling that call, and that's certainly what I have learned in my own life, and what I try to tell people, even, parishioners today. And so today for instance, we're celebrating the feast of Saints Cosmas and Damian. I mean, at the time we're recording this, November 1st. Right. And Saints Cosmas and Damian are a very unique, obviously, duo of saints. They are part of a very unique category of saints that we commemorate on the Proskomedia at every liturgy, the unmercenaries, the healers, along with Saint Panteleimon, Saints Cyrus and John, Hermolaos. I mean, there's so many other healers, right? Who they were given a gift of medicine, both spiritual and physical, and they used it for the church, and they used it for God's flock. And they said, Lord, you just put us where you want us to be. And it was obviously something that was fulfilling to them, even though hard, and good for the world around them. And so even my sermon this morning at liturgy was about saying all of us have gifts, and all of us, are called to try to, listen in on how, first of all, what God is saying to us, and also how God is calling us to use these gifts. And whatever that gift is, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't matter. I mean, God needs good workers, hopefully, right?
Right.
Well, good people. I mean, to talk about the congregation here now, again, he needs good people in whatever positions in life or in the world, right? I mean, whether it's the janitor, a lawyer, a doctor, a politician, an athlete, I mean, you never know how you can affect somebody's life by utilizing your gifts. And so it's an incredible thing. I'd be lying if I would say it was like smooth sailing even after that decision that I made to finally answer the calling, so to speak. But nevertheless, it was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders when I finally kind of, rather than try to fight the wind, go with the wind and turn my sail into the wind. St. John Chrysostom says, the ship that has its sail tied tightly around the mast cannot be taken by the wind where it needs to go, right? Only the ship that has its sail loose and free can be taken by the wind to where it needs to go. And he's using, obviously, this as a metaphor for the heart.
Yeah.
Right? The heart needs to be loose and open and free to whatever God's will is, so that you can do it. And mine was very much tied around the mast.
Sure.
And it took years to kind of loosen up, and still it's not loosened up as much as it should be, And
let the sail out, Father Niko. Let it out.
No, that's what my wife tells me all the time. Just stop being a tuvlo, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, that's right. So, but this was all still within the your first year at college at University of Washington. So,
right.
But you'd confirmed that you were going to act upon this calling at some point. So, how did you navigate the rest of college, still knowing that you would be pursuing this afterwards?
Another good question. So basically, in terms of, I ultimately majored in history because I loved history and still love history. And
that's a good.
I felt, knowing that I was going to be going to study theology afterwards, it was a perfect complement to theology. The historical context of how things happen. So very important. And I also did a lot of Greek language, ancient Greek.
Yeah. They had Greek language program at University of Washington.
Yeah, so they had ancient Greek, which all universities do more or less, and then they also had modern Greek studies too. Excuse me. And even though I spoke Greek already, it did enhance a lot of other kind of more formal words that I didn't know because I spoke Greek of the kusina, basically.
Yeah, sure. The best Greek. And then
exactly.
Reading and writing it too, though, in college, which is take it to the next level. Yeah.
And also, actually, we did have we did go to Greek school as kids as well. And but Greek school was different when like in the 80s when I was growing up, because it was already presumed that the kids who were coming to Greek school knew how to speak Greek. And the only thing you were learning there is how to read and write Greek,
Whoa.
Years later is when it was trying to teach Greek, but that's a different conversation. I mean, it's tough to do that, just 2 hours a week or whatever, when people
of course
Spanish every day for 4 years and still don't speak Spanish at the end of that, so
right.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So basically, I asked Father John, I said, so what do I do now? Should I just transfer to Hellenic College? He says, no, finish your studies, finish University of Washington.
Right.
And also he says, continue to test the calling, just to keep praying about it. Keep making sure that it's real and all this kind of thing. He wanted to make sure, even though I knew.
Very good advice. Yeah.
So I still would tell a couple of people here and there, but I didn't tell anybody, including my parents, until my last year of UW.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Look at that.
And that was another interesting story, because I sat down my parents. This is like during my senior year of college, towards my last year. So I've already applied to seminary, and I've got the packets. And I just told them, I said, "Are you guys gonna be home tonight?" Separately, I asked my parents, and they said, "Yeah." So I said, "Okay, I just have someone to talk to you and Baba about, Mom." So I got them together in the living room of my house, and I just gave them the application packet. And my mom didn't say a word the whole time. My dad was totally blindsided because he was super concerned, because he had seen the way certain priests were moved around. Even in Seattle. I mean, Assumption had 3 priests during my childhood. Father Steve was there for most of it, but then Father John was there for 5, and then we had a new priest at the time, Father Dean, who had been there only 2 years, and assistant priest at St. Demetrius had been moved in and out a lot. So he knew that it was hard. He just assumed it was like the military, where you just have no say and you just
pick up and go.
And how it might be hard for your family and all that stuff. And there's some truth to that, of course, too. But there's obviously way more to the story than that now. I mean, we have more say in it than that, and it depends on the bishop too. And I'm thankful that Metropolitan Yerasimos is really good about trying to be concerned and have an awareness of the health of the clergy family. It's very important. So
yeah, it's completely different these days. We used to joke. I mean, even just going back to like, a decade ago or so, like we used to joke like, oh, you never know where you're going to end up, but it doesn't really apply these days anymore. Guys, they're set in places. If it's good for their family, they'll remain there for as long as they would like to. And yeah, it's much healthier these days in that regard. But back then, during your time, your dad had a very valid concern because it could you could go in.
Obviously, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, just being his son, and you're as a parent, you're always concerned about your children and stuff, and he was, he worried a little bit about us and stuff. But the next morning, I mean, my mom didn't say a word the whole night. And
nothing.
Yeah.
Oh,
we just kind of we went to bed, kind of just agreeing to disagree a little bit, and then the next morning, I asked my mom, like I woke up, I went into the kitchen, and she's there, like preparing breakfast for herself and stuff, and my younger brothers and stuff, and I said, so what are your thoughts? I mean, I didn't hear from you at all last night, Mom. And she's like, I saw it coming. So my dad was blindsided. My mom totally saw it coming. She said, it sounded like you and your dad needed to have that time, she says. So I just kind of stayed in the back and let it happen. And she was very wise in that way. But obviously now both my parents are super happy and super, they're thrilled that they feel that I've landed in a very good place for me, good place for my family. It's fulfilling. It's a great, beautiful thing in the life. And as society moves more and more to the secular, there is more of a need for priests and obviously, I mean, but ministry in general to feed the flock, and to give people what they need in order to not lose the messages of what it means to be a healthy human being and close to Jesus Christ, because our society would dupe us into thinking that it's only about the body, not about the soul. But the church has been saying for thousands of years that in order to be a healthy human being, you need a healthy body and a healthy soul, Right. Otherwise, you're just asking for problems. And I think we see that so often in the world today.
Yeah.
So the church has a very key role to play nowadays. Unfortunately, it seems like it's been relegated to kind of the back burner in terms of, how powerful that message is nowadays, even though it's always timeless. But how much our society chooses to listen in is up to them. And obviously, even it's the same thing in Jesus' time, right? He who has ears to hear, let him hear.
Yeah.
But as St. Paul says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there's a need, and it's something that brings me a lot of joy. And thank God, we've been blessed in our family so much, and we're in a wonderful parish now in Castro Valley, and life is good. So I wake up every day and just do my cross, and say thank you.
Good for you, Father. That's it's pretty amazing to hear your story that way. And then once you wrapped up though with the University of Washington, what were your impressions like of the seminary at long last, shall we say? I feel like your anticipation of attending the seminaries maybe it was a little longer than the average waiting period, shall we say. And so after hearing about it being a West Coaster like I am too, having really no idea what the East Coast was even like, let alone Boston, let alone the school. Once you were there, what was your experience like? And were you in Polymenakos and everything? Did you go? Okay. So
Polymenakos, and I've never in my life experienced winter that tries to kill you.
That's exactly what it is. That's what it is. I've never heard it put that way, but that's for 4 years. It was trying to kill me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it lasts for 9 months out of the year or whatever, right?
Tries to kill
and don't get me wrong. I mean, Seattle gets snow and it gets cold and stuff too, but not like that. I mean,
not that crazy cold. Yeah.
Not the crazy cold that comes from the Arctic Circle or whatever to the Midwest and the Northeast. I mean, it's just brutal. No, I mean, well, first of all, I will say this. I mean, obviously all roads lead to Rome. I kind of don't like that expression because it should be all roads lead to Constantinople, but that's okay,
That's good. That's good too.
But I mean, everybody has a different path and all that stuff, right? I mean, and everybody has a different calling that they have to answer in their own way. For me, I've met absolutely wonderful priests who have come from being products of Hellenic College for 4 years and then 3 years of seminary, the 7 years, right?
7-year route, yeah.
I tell you, it should not. Oh, sorry, what was that?
Well, I just said yes, the 7-year route. That
right,
some guy.
Yeah. But I cannot understate how valuable it was for me personally to go to a public university for 4 years, then an Orthodox graduate school, right?
For sure.
Because it's kind of like you get a snapshot of kind kind of what, maybe not what the world is, because even the university is kind of like a bubble,
Yeah.
but you get a taste of where like there's antagonism towards religion. You get a taste of maybe kind of what, you know, the secular world prioritizes and stuff, and how people kind of frame things and frame arguments and whatever. And you get a taste of what the world you're going to be going back into is, right? And so you have this public university system, and I'm very thankful I went there. I loved University of Washington. I had a lot of friends there and loved what I studied, and the campus was beautiful. And I'm very grateful that my parents were able to pay for it and everything. No student loans or anything, thank God. And then going to the seminary, you now are in a much smaller setting. I mean, like 35,000 students to like 200 students, basically, right? Of Orthodox seminarians. So, and that was really cool too, because, you know, because it's the only Greek Orthodox seminary in the country, no matter who you are, no matter where you grow up, no matter where you live in the United States, you go to Holy Cross to become a priest, more or less, right? 95% of the time.
95%. Right? Yeah.
And so it's cool. You get to see, like, you get to hear the different accents from all over the country. You get to,
yeah, it is a melting pot, isn't it? I never thought of it. Yeah.
I love that, because you see the differences with how people think, how people talk, what people's opinions are, different sports teams. You know, I mean,
how they approach the weather, like all the Chicago guys were ready with their big jackets, and I had like, dude, I had nothing. I was totally underprepared, but yeah, like everything, yeah.
The Chicago guys are ready to go swimming in December or whatever, right?
yeah, this is nothing. Yeah.
No, but and you see how many, like, you know, people who don't really come with a sports team or even care about sports start buying all the Red Sox and Patriots gear.
Patriots and Red Sox
Wagoner thing, and I'm just like, come on, guys, give me what you didn't even care about sports until 5 minutes ago. Come on.
Yeah.
So, but no, it's cool. It's cool. Actually, you know what was awesome? Absolutely awesome. Okay, so as much as I'm, you know, bashing people who are bandwagoners, I totally jumped on the Red Sox bandwagon the year that they reversed the curse. So, my first year of seminary was 2004. And that was the year that they finally, I mean, the front page of the Boston Globe or whatever the newspaper is, right? Yeah. Just says finally, right? The next day.
That's pretty funny.
When the Red Sox won the World Series for the first time in like 90 years or whatever, it was 86 years or whatever, since they traded Babe Ruth and stuff. So that was the energy, the electricity in the city, the pulse of the city. So much fun. It is so cool. And like, Boston is definitely a sports town, and it can be obnoxious at times if your team's playing whoever. But overall, oh man, it was a ton of fun. It was a ton of fun. Yeah, no, I was very thankful for my experience at seminary, and I loved being around other Orthodox people. And you know, I mean, there's some that really give the seminary a bad rap, and I didn't have that experience, you know, at all. I mean, I definitely think that you know, it could use more money so that, you know, for the facilities to be upgraded, like the dorms. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, come on, man. I mean, if you want to design a boot camp and trying to, you know, break a person's reliance on creature comforts, I mean, Polymenakos Hall is the way to do it, man. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's something crazy when, you know, when I attended the seminary, I got there in 2014. My dad's been a priest for almost like 40 years. He's coming up on like 40 years as a priest, and the fact that he lived in the same dorm building that I lived in is a little crazy. I mean, that's like, and there's things like that. Yeah, so of course there's always room for improvement facilities wise, and as we know, that being on the church side of things too, we know how, you know, quickly buildings need repairs and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely something to be said for throwing a little donation, a little extra love the school's way so they can address things like that. Yeah.
And I won't even go into the cafeteria. But anyway.
But let's
I will say, during my time there, Father Nick did a lot of great fundraising, and I'm sure many others did too. They revamped the whole library. The library was beautiful. I mean, they had opened Archbishop Yakovos Library like late 90s. They redid the gym. It was beautiful, state of the art, like, you know, equipment and stuff, really nice. The chapel has always been beautiful. I mean, they had just put in marble a couple years
ago. Yeah, they redid the flooring.
The flooring, because I remember the video that I saw when I was thinking about attending seminary was all carpet in the chapel, and then when I got there, it was all marble. So
what video was that? Was that the video? Was that the video with Father Kalivas?
Which one?
No, I'm thinking there's a video on the liturgy. Was it that video, or was it like a promo video?
It was a promo video.
Okay, never mind. I was going to ask, because in the liturgy video, there's a deacon in the video, and I, like, you know, I'd had people when I went to the seminary, they came up to me and they're like, "Oh, hey, Christo, like you kind of look like I know you from somewhere." turns out my dad was the deacon in the video
wow.
liturgy. So yeah, Father Nick Belcher and people like that recognize my dad from.
Yeah.
So anyway, different video, not important. But
Nice.
yeah.
In Polymenakos, were you on the hot side or the cold side?
Ooh, so I was on the hot side is the side that faces campus, right?
Correct.
I was on the hot side, and I don't know how the guys on the sub levels on the cold side. I don't know how. Oh, well, you're from Seattle. Okay, we were a
Well,
little.
no. I mean, I was on the cold side and it was brutal. I mean, and there was, yeah, I mean, it was tough because yeah, anyway, I mean, you put a sheet over the window panes, right? And like just to kind of hopefully keep the draft from coming in outside, and you see the sheet doing this. The window's closed and the sheet's moving, you know?
Oh, wow.
So it was, yeah, it was brutal. But no, I joke about it. But I just believe in general as Orthodox Christians, especially in this country, we should have a high bar. I mean, we should take pride in who we are. So let's keep asking what's next, what's next, what's next.
Yeah.
You know, like what else can we improve? What else can we advance? What else can we grow? And I know it's happening, you know, I know it's happening in time, but you know, I think being very deliberate and having a concerted effort in those things. I know a lot of people want to do that, and I think it's a good thing for the church, you know, in general. But yeah. So anyway, yeah, but the school was wonderful, and I graduated University of Washington in 2004, and I graduated seminary in 2008, and you know, moved to California July of 08. I got married August of 08 to my beautiful wife, and started in San Francisco at the cathedral in September as a lay assistant.
Man, what a big year! Many life events at once. Wow.
Huge year, yeah. But it was very exciting, very fun. So
then, like you said, graduated the seminary, married Presbytera Stella, and then began working at the parish that I now work at, the
Metropolis. Job, man. Your old job, my old job, your job, your current job. Yeah.
That's it. Here we are, full circle. How would you say your perceptions of ordained ministry in Christ Church were accurate before working on the other side of the vineyard, and how were they different? Did the seminary, to what degree did the seminary kind of prepare you for these things, and how much was a learning process once you know, your feet hit the ground running yourself on the working side? How much were you learning kind of on the fly?
You know, I mean, there's that's another podcast in and of itself. I mean,
yeah, actually, part two. Yeah.
But I will just say this, you know, I'm going to try to say this without being too dismissive of the challenges of the priesthood, because obviously it is definitely challenging. It's definitely hard. It has its moments, you know, and where it's you know, you might feel maybe just a taste of some of the difficulties that maybe, you know, Christ went through with, and when he even warned us. I mean, like, he warned his followers, if they persecute me, they're going to persecute you. And that's a very stark way of looking at it. And I'm not saying it's not true, of course, but at the same time, you know, Christo, I throughout my life have encountered so many people who just say, you know, even before I graduated seminary, people are like, oh, just wait. Oh, just wait until you get married, or oh, just wait until you have kids.
Okay, so for all life events, not just, I thought, just wait till you're priest. Okay,
and then oh, just wait till you're ordained. And I'm like, anyway, each one of these things that I encounter, I'm like, you know, it's actually pretty nice.
Yeah, not so bad. Yeah,
wonderful. What are you guys talking about? I thought to myself, like, married life is awesome. Having children is wonderful. Yeah. Being in ministry is wonderful, you know? Oh, well, that's because you're an assistant. Just wait till you get your own parish.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You know, and I'm kind of like, anyway, so I've gone through all these life events, and every single time there's so much like negativity, you know, and, you know, you hear about jadedness and whatever. And again, I'm not saying that challenges aren't a real thing, but man, I got to tell you, I mean, I just think that it is absolutely awesome. And ministry is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So anybody who's listening to this right now and is contemplating this and is on the fence or is nervous or whatever, yeah, okay, fine. There's challenges. There's challenges in everything. There's challenges in any walk of life. I mean, I've heard all kinds of stories of different people's careers and horrible bosses that they have, or, you know, they travel like crazy for, you know, work, and they barely see their family, and they have a tough time juggling that with their family life. I mean, you know what? I mean, everybody has some kind of struggle, some kind of challenge, some kind of cross, right? And I, you know, regardless of that, I absolutely think the priesthood is wonderful. Ordained ministry, it goes back to what I was saying about, you know, not just being so happy with it because it's fulfilling. I mean, you know, it definitely you utilize every single tool that God has given you at your disposal, because you have to use everything. You have a whole toolbox of stuff, and you've got to use every single one of those depending on what the demand is in ministry. And so, and there's a part of me that really loves that, because you're not just stuck doing the same thing all the time. You know, you really feel like you're utilizing kind of every aspect of yourself. No, I think ministry is wonderful. It's fulfilling. Even the tragic moments when you go to somebody's house and you walk into, or the emergency room or something, and there's just someone's just passed away. Yeah. Even then, you see the relief that comes on these people's faces when they see a priest walk into the room. You know, yes. I'm not there to take their pain away or to make to resuscitate a person who's passed away, nor do they expect me to. Just to hold them in their pain and their struggle, and that sends a message of God is with you during this struggle. And so, even those things that are very challenging and very heavy, even those things, you know, make me feel fulfilled, if you will. I mean, it's not about me, of course, but you see, because you see even a positive impact happening even in those moments, you know. So I would say don't even hesitate. If anybody's thinking about ordained ministry, you know, and is feeling a similar calling, because it does have to be a calling. I really believe that it has to take discernment. You have to have a spiritual father, all that stuff, right? So, but all that being said, if someone feels that it is a calling to ministry, to ordained ministry, I wouldn't even hesitate. I wouldn't even think twice about it. If God is calling you to it, go for it. It'll be the best thing for you and the world around you. I really believe that. So I never put too much stock in negativity. I never put too much stock in the jadedness and the whatever else. And again, yes, I know there's evil in the world. Why dwell on it? You know, I mean, we had a men's fellowship meeting at our church. At somebody's a parishioner's house last Sunday night, and after dinner we were having a discussion with 10 gentlemen. It was really wonderful. And one of the guys says, St. Paisios was once approached by someone who was talking to him about all the struggles in his life and all the things that he felt Satan was doing to pull him down, right? And he brings one thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then the saint stops and he says, I'm sorry to hear all those things. Now let's talk about Christ.
Yeah.
Ας μιλήσουμε τώρα για τον Χριστό. In other words, let's talk about Christ, he says. In other words, yes, Satan is there. Even St. Porphyrio said this. You don't become holy by fighting evil.
Right.
Let evil be.
Right.
Let it be. He goes, just focus on Christ. So, and that way we navigate through it, right? I sound like I got all the answers. I definitely don't.
No, that's very good, Father. Good for you for keeping the positivity, because, in the world in general, it's kind of like it's easy to hop on the negativity bandwagon into, misery loves company, I suppose. So people love complaining or, not finding hope in things. But actually, I'm going to go back to something you once said when we did a baptism together, and you were giving a little mini sermon while the child was being changed. And you talked about the concept of good and evil, and that we actually in the church believe in this concept of good and evil because, of course, we have God and there's Satan, but that the good always wins, and that the evil is no match for the good because the good is God. And so that the evil really has no power, but, unfortunately in the world we give it power. But so good for you for always keeping that positivity in all things in life, not just the priesthood, but married life, having kids. Because we've all heard the common complaints, but they are just about the most beautiful things that people can experience. So, what a great message, Father, for not only people who are pursuing the priesthood to hear, to think positively about that, but for any viewers or listeners to have just a positive outlook on their own lives as well. So, thank you for sharing that. It was very nice.
Thank you, Christo. And you're a really wonderful, positive guy too. So it's easy to be positive around a positive person, right? Yeah. But I mean, if you think about it, I mean, even Jesus said, right? He says, apart from me, you can do nothing. If we turn away from him, I mean, we can't really expect great results, right?
Right.
If he is the source of all good, then we just have to try to stay connected. And he's talking about the vine and the branches at this point, but it certainly applies to ministry. It certainly applies to everything in life, So, I remember, Father, to bring up another professor from seminary, there was one day that one of our professors missed class because he had an emergency call. He was serving at a parish at the same time.
Oh, sure.
This is another thing I would hope one day. Obviously, a priest always needs to be connected to the altar, but at the same time, I hope it gets to the point someday when we can have priests who are just exclusive to the seminary, and serving there, so they can serve the needs of the students and the school without being called away to pastoral ministry. Because if you can't do either one that well, it's not fair to
Both
that.
sides are going to lose out.
Plus,
Yeah.
plus to the parishioners of that parish, plus to the students in a way, it just too much. Having said all that, though, he comes back the next day and mentions what the emergency was, and he says, I found this person and this person. He talked about, like, I think a child who had passed away. Unfortunately, he had to go be with the family.
Oh.
And I remember he talked to us a little bit, even though it wasn't a pastoral ministry class. It was just another type of class. And he says, how, he was talking about how challenging it was, how difficult it was. And I raised my hand after he was done, and I said, Father, how do you do it? Where do you get the strength to walk into the room with the family, and how do you deal with that? How do you approach that? And he says, Nikolai, I can tell you, the only source of strength is our good Lord. That's it,
Beautiful.
So remembering that the only source of strength is our good Lord, turning to him, letting the devil do his thing, but we stick with him, as much as we can. So anyway, I'm making it sound very, very stark and black and white. I mean, obviously I have my terrible days, and just because we encounter somebody outside of, someone who says something negative one day, or even trends towards negativity, doesn't mean they're negative all the time. Doesn't mean they don't have a beautiful heart. That's also something that Orthodoxy talks about, is the nuance, right, of saint and sinner at the same time. So, or however you want to slice it, good, evil, positive, negative, So anyway, don't mean to make it sound like it's all cut and dry in any of us, but it is cut and dry when it comes to Christ and that source of strength that we all derive from. So thank God for that.
Very nice, Father. Well, thank you. We're coming to the end of our hour together, but I want to thank you. Like I mentioned, we see each other thankfully often because we're both in the Bay Area serving parishes. But it was very nice to kind of take this time apart from everything else, from the usual responsibilities, shall I say, and to hear your story and hear a little bit more about you. I know that you will inspire anyone who might be not on the fence, but wrestling with the calling themselves. I think you might have just had the words they needed to hear, as Bishop Anthony had for you at that very young age. So I want to thank you for coming on the podcast with us. If there's any parting advice or wisdom you want to share with us, now's the time.
I was going to ask you that. I don't have any. No, it's okay. Just, I would say, if I guess anything else, just prosevhi. That's how we discern, because that's another important word in Orthodoxy, is discernment. Diakrisis. And prayer is how we discern. Prayer, and hopefully with a coach, to use a sports term, a spiritual father. It's important to stay close to someone, and both in the sacrament of confession, but also even in just liturgy and worship and conversation and stuff. So God willing, if anything good has come out of this, Doxa do Theo. So thank God. Thank you for having me, Christo, and thanks for being the person that you are. I know you do a lot at your parish over there, and it's beautiful to see your struggle and your perseverance, and the spiritual ascesis that you, as a person who knows about ascesis, right? A gym rat who can talk about spiritual ascesis too, right? It's a beautiful blessing, and it's a holy struggle. So God bless you in your struggle too.
Thank you very much, Father. I appreciate that. And we thank you all for tuning in and watching today's episode. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Path to the Priesthood.